Nocturnal Animals is a drama thriller directed by Tom Ford, which is based on a novel written by Austin Wright. Tom Ford is a successful fashion designer who's directed 2 feature films so far. This video will have major spoilers on the entire film. Fair warning. We start the film with Amy Adams, who plays Susan. She's a wealthy art gallery owner. If you just met her, you would think that she has a great life, but she's unhappy. She's in a crumbling marriage with a husband who she knows is cheating on her and is unsatisfied with her career. One day, her ex-husband, Edward, played by the great Jake Gyllenhaal, sends her a manuscript of his new novel named Nocturnal Animals, which is something he would call her when they were together. As she reads the novel, the film plays it out. Jake Gyllenhaal is driving his wife and teenage daughter through Texas when they get harassed by 3 men. They run them off the road and they get a flat tire. 2 of the men take his wife and daughter, and one of the men makes Gyllenhaal drive his car off the road and leaves him there. They come back later to kill him, but he hides. He gets Detective Andes assigned to the case, who is dedicated to find these guys. They find his wife and daughter's naked corpses in the desert. They were both raped and murdered. It takes over a year, but he finds them after a robbery gone wrong. 1 is arrested, 1 is dead, and 1 escaped. He only has enough evidence to get one of them thrown in prison, but that's not good enough. Andes is dying of lung cancer, and he has seen too many criminals get away with crimes like this, and tells Gyllenhaal he's going to help him kill these guys. Andes kills one of them, and Gyllenhaal kills the other the next day, but he dies doing so. It doesn't play the book out all at once though. Like anyone reading a novel, she takes breaks. In those breaks, we mostly see flashbacks of Edward's and hers relationship. They've known each other since they were kids. Susan's brother and Edward were best friends. They got engaged in their early 20s. Susan's mother tells her Edward is a romantic, but he is weak and will never make enough money to support them. She also tells her in a few years, she will hate Edward for all the things that she loves about him now. She warns her not to marry him, because she will regret it and it will just hurt Edward in the end. She goes against her parents' wishes and marries him anyway, but her mother was right. Edward is dedicated to becoming a writer and isn't making much money. Susan leaves Edward, then aborts their baby behind his back, but he finds out. That's the last time they've seen each other. Susan emails Edward saying she loved the book and wants to meet up with him. He agrees to meet her for dinner. She goes to the restaurant and waits all night for him, but he stands her up. I think it's pretty obvious that everything in Edward's novel is a metaphor for his and Susan's relationship. Just like in the book, he lost the woman he loved and his child. He blames himself for being weak and not being man enough to keep them together. Susan broke his heart and it almost killed him. But Edward is a true artist, and true artists turn their tragedies and pain into art. In a flashback of their relationship, Edward shows Susan some of his early work, which she doesn't like. She tells him, "You should write about something other than yourself," and he tells her, "All writers only write about themselves." Every piece of great fiction comes from something personal in the writer's life. They just use metaphors to disguise it. Some metaphors are much more obvious than others, but Edward not only sends Susan the manuscript of the book, but also dedicates it to her. That's Edward telling Susan, "You inspired this. You broke my heart, and this is what I created from it." In the beginning of their relationship, they both have faith in Edward's talent. But very soon after, Susan loses her faith and needs more superficial things in life than his job at a bookstore can afford them. So she throws him away. She admits that she loves him, but it's not enough. She grew up from a very wealthy, judgmental family, and she rebelled against that for a bit. She has obvious anger for her mother and tells her she's nothing like her. Her mother tells her, "One day we all turn into our mother." And she does. She leaves Edward for a much more successful man who can provide her with all the material things she thinks she deserves in life, and she gets everything she wants and realizes it's meaningless if she shares it with a man that doesn't love her. She even says she tried contacting Edward a few years ago, but he just hung up on her, and she admits she did something unforgivable to him. She has been living in regret for some time now, and reading Edward's book makes her face her past and everything she did wrong. When I first saw the trailer of this film, I thought it was going to be about a woman who gets a book from her ex-husband where the man kills his wife and she's afraid that he's going to kill her in real life, just like he wrote in the book. I thought it was going to be this revenge thriller, so when I watched it, I was blown away and completely surprised. But it is a revenge thriller, just not in a traditional sense. Edward doesn't get revenge on Susan by killing her. He gets revenge by proving her wrong. She didn't believe he could be successful by being an artist, and it took him almost 20 years to do it, but he stuck to his art and he did it. I think almost every man has a Susan, the one woman that broke their heart, and they use that heartbreak and anger to fuel their desire to succeed so they can make the woman regret ever leaving them. The best revenge is living a successful life. I think Michael Shannon, who plays Detective Andes, represents that voice in Edward, telling him to keep going. Don't be a pussy, get revenge. But the first time I watched this film, I wasn't thinking about all this. To be honest, I was very high the first watch, so I was just hooked in on Edward's novel. That scene where they get run off the road is incredibly tense and scary. Aaron Taylor Johnson as Ray Marcus is a terrifying villain, but he's very charismatic, which makes him even more scary. Even though this film has a modern, rich hipster look, the novel in this film, which is a big portion of the story, reminds me of a 70s grindhouse film. Ray reminds me of David Hess's character in The Last House on the Left, an evil man who is just looking for any reason to rape and murder women. This is a very deep film that just gets better with multiple watches. It's one of my favorite films of the past few years. It's a great role for Jake Gyllenhaal, and overall just a very unique and well-made film and story that has many elements that I can relate to as a struggling artist who has dealt with heartbreak. So that's my review on Nocturnal Animals. I'm Jacob from Cinema Junkies. Thanks for watching. Keep watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and follow me on Instagram, cinemajunkies_. Don't forget the underscore.